on this weldment and members here. And so the weakest part of this airframe that we're concerned about is the cutaway top longeron. Now with the Parasol version, which is stronger, there's cabanes that run up here and here, a member across the front, and then diagonals running down. And what that does, it carries loads all the way back to the fuselage again. So the top longeron is basically back intact from this right here being cut away. It goes down here instead. So with the Parasol, the longeron is put back in place and it's much stronger. We're not worried about the Parasol fuselage and the strength of it. Our weakest point at this where calculations so far is the MotorBipe, because the top longeron is cut away and there's not a member replacing it. The loads are taken by the seat member running here and the seat member running down. What we're simulating at this point right here is a 200-pound pilot in a 4G landing load. Now, I'll explain a little bit about flight loads. If you take an airplane and you impact the ground, the wings are trying to come down, so that would be a negative load. Well, where you're sitting right here, because of where the gear is and the tail on the ground, and if you're coming and you're impacting the ground, the weight of the pilot is pushing down, and that makes a positive load, just like we're showing right here, a positive load from this trying to bend and come down from a high impact of landing. And this is 800 pounds or a 200-pound pilot in a 4G landing. You can see the tires have been flattened by the weight of the 800 pounds. We've got a little bending down here, and another thing I want to say is that this is a continuous 4G load that we're showing. A lot of people will put jacks under here and jack it up, release the pressure, say 1001, 1002, 1003, and then back up and say, yeah, it took 4 Gs. But this is a continuous load. Nothing is under it to hold it up. This is a 4G continuous load. And you can see that everything is intact. Another way to explain the positive loads on landing is, say if you were flying, you pull back on the stick, you can feel your butt go down in the seat. That's a positive load. You pull back on the stick, you can, your weight of your body becomes more. You can feel the weight in your seat. You kind of dip your head down and your chin down. That's a positive load. Same type of load that we're showing right here. Let's say if you're flying and you pull back on the stick real hard, and for some reason you do pull 4 Gs, which I still don't believe you can do in this airplane. At 4 Gs, a 200-pound pilot would weigh 800 pounds, and this would be the same type of load. You can see there's nothing under it. It is a continuous load. This is a seat belt here. Put it out of the way. You can see the tail spring is bent down quite a bit from even the weight, because the weight is evened out over the fuselage. You can see it is bending, and the bungee is just about extended as far as it's going to go. And the members that are bending at this point are the seat mat members. You can see this little curve here. And a little bending here. This here. But this is 800 pounds under a continuous load, what you're looking at. Okay, we've taken the Parasol cabane supports off of it. You can see they're around here. And there's 2 more that run down this way. So that's the things that I'm talking about, the load being, or the longeron being put back in place and the load going through here, because the load comes up, through, and then down. The Parasol, it would be a much stronger fuselage, or probably twice as strong fuselage as this fuselage, because the load could be converted up, back, and then down through the cabanes running to the back. And that's like putting this longeron back intact. Now this longeron actually comes up, down, load runs through, and up. What people are concerned about is the cutaway area here, and that's why this test. The rest of the structure has been flight tested and sandbag tested to the point, the RagWing special wings and the MotorBipe wings are the same. There's been absolutely no problem with them. This is the only concern that we've had is the cutaway long run and the loads going through here. So what we're going to do is continue loading. We are showing 4Gs here, and we're going to see what happens when we go a little higher. Once again, a continuous 6G load for a 200-pound pilot pulling 6Gs, 1,200 pounds total. Continuous load and no failure. Okay, what we have now is a slightly over a 4G negative flying load. This simulates actual 600-pound gross weight. I'm going to get my little board here. If I can zoom in on this a little. Gross of 600 pounds times a negative 4Gs is 2,400 pounds, but you have to remember, if it's pulling 4Gs in the air, 2,400 pounds is spread over the entire airplane. So when you start calculating loads over the entire airplane, about 20% is to the fuselage, 10% to the tail feathers, 70% to the wings over the entire fuselage. Now what I want to do is calculate worst case scenario. 20% of the 2,400 pounds at 4Gs is 480 pounds negative load being put to the fuselage at 4Gs. That's just the, it's not the pilot weight. Let's say if the pilot is pulling 4Gs, then his restraint belts are holding them in, which is actually putting an additional load to the fuselage. So I'm putting plus the pilot of 200 pounds at 4Gs is 800 pounds. So what I want to calculate too is the 800 pounds for the pilot weight pulling negatively against the fuselage. The 480 pounds that the fuselage has already taken is 1,280 pounds. That is the worst case scenario for this fuselage at 4 negative Gs, which is what we're showing. And what I want to do is I want to load up the rest of it just to make sure that the ultimate will go higher than that. We now have 1,200 pounds on the fuselage. Okay, what I like to, not just in one location, but this is a worst case scenario. This is a 1,200 pound negative G load. You can see we've got a lot of bending in the fuselage, but no failures. It's 1,280 pounds. 6 negative Gs. Okay, we're working, fuselage is inverted. The positive load, this actual load is a continuous 4G positive load on the tail feathers. It's 480 pounds, and it's taking that quite well. You can see we have the drag cables there stretched to their max. But it is holding a continuous 4G positive load. 480 pounds. You can see the damage that we've done from the positive loads on the tail spring so far. That's when we had it setting up right. Okay, so we want to go a little further. Let's go 6 positive on the tail feathers. Okay, now we have well over 6 G's positive on the tail feathers. Continuous load with no failure as of yet. 10 bags, 80 pounds per bag, that's 800 pounds on the tail feathers alone. You see we are pretty much stretched to the max, but no failures at 800 pounds. This calculates roughly, without sitting down and doing all the math, it calculates 480 pounds is 4 G's. This would be about 8 positive G's, approximately, but we're calling it plus 6 and knowing that it's well over that. Plus 6 positive tail feathers. 800 pounds, 400 pounds per side.
This is a RagWing Aviation Takena Air Park in Townville, South Carolina. And we are a very small outback country operation. My buildings are basically these buildings here, the 2 main arch hangars where I build in and assemble and paint and do all the building, and the 4 storage hangars here. You can see, I think one of my prototypes still in there. Yeah, that's the prototype Ultra Pete, the air camper replica. See the wings, and the other airplanes are Phantoms, and they're rental planes that people keep here. They're at least the spots to fly off the 1,000-foot runway here, or 1,200-foot runway. And we can have a total of about 14 planes here. We've got these 4 hangars and then the 4 behind there. And lots of really nice fields and runway around the air park. But this is the RagWing Aviation home base at Takena Air Park in Townville, South Carolina. This is the prototype RagWing aerial. It's disassembled right now for rebuild. Rebuild mostly after the structural tests we did. Made some of the joints weak. We loaded it to 6, plus 6, minus 6, and we're going to have to go back in and look at all the bolts and everything before I feel real good about flying it again. But the main question is about the parasol configuration and how to get this parasol wing holders up there. So this is it. Just like you've got the MotorBipe video, except these members on this airplane come straight up and are attached directly to that square 2-inch tube. Now there are spacers in here, tube spacers that are bought from leading edge airfoils, U-brackets, but that's pretty self-explanatory here, how to get that up there. Doing it this way instead of using the U-brackets, because the U-brackets seem to twist and really get wiggling around here. With this system here, with a tube on each side and going straight through the tube, it doesn't have a chance to move around. These have been installed for a wing fold system, and because I'm putting aluminum wings on it, I'm attempting to put aluminum wings on this airplane instead of wood wings. That's why these have been installed. And the wings are raised above the Pete here. But you can see they're basically done except for the ailerons. There's a better shot. And those large tubes there will bolt directly into the brackets we just looked at. They will bolt into there and in between here. And the struts will come from these 2 points here. I guess it could be put out here also, but I think I'm going to come in here, either here or here. It really doesn't matter which you come to, because of the, if you attach here, they'll just be sloping back a little bit because the leading edge will be in here. Those two members will be butted up against here to get the seat a little more raised up, because it is leaning back just a little bit too far for my preference. But I'm going to put that in there and raise the seat up so to come down this way. I'm going to have to move my stick just a little bit to do that, but I don't think it'll be too bad of a problem. And the rear ones are attached, of course, with the U bracket. And then finish this up. There'll be an aluminum gusset plate going around this, coming down to here, be riveted in and riveted in to hold that rear one. It was located further forward. This is going to be a little bit further back. What that's going to do is give it a little more slope, and I'm even thinking of enclosing this in to see how it does. They used to come down just like this, but I think I'm going to try fabric this just to see how it turns out. And you can see it comes straight up from there, straight up from there. And everything else is just like the MotorBipe. You know, this is originally the MotorBipe fuselage. This is the MotorBipe fuselage conformed into the aerial, which is what everybody seemed to ask for. And now what everybody seems to ask for is those babies right there, which is the aluminum wings. Those still recommending the wood wing until I get these tested. I just real not sure about the strength of them and if they're going to be okay or not, how they perform. I don't have any specs on those aluminum wings yet. I do know that the wood wings, built many sets of those, they do extremely well, and it's the same wing that is, the wood wing is actually the same wing they use on the Team Air bike, 4414, NACA 4414. Made it a little bit different in order not to infringe upon them too heavily, but the same airfoil and basically the same span of performance. Once we get some firm figures and this a little closer to being complete, we'll finish it up, video on it, and offer it to people if this aluminum wing works out. If not, then you'll probably won't even ever hear this. There's the aluminum wings, compression struts, X cross cables for diagonals, and 2-inch main spars, 2-inch 058. These are 16-foot long a piece. That would make the airplane a 32-foot span. One of the things I had to replace after I did the structural load test is this member here, which is the U channel in there. I bent it pretty good, and I didn't want to fly with it bent after I did all the structural tests, and after I went 6 Gs. So that's one of the things I have replaced also.